This is Linda West of Living Live. Today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Sharon Lechter. Now Sharon is a world-renowned financial literacy expert, and she is a New York Times best-selling author. It's not very often you get to meet one of those. Today we're here to talk to Sharon. Now Sharon, you've written a lot of books.
22
books, and what would you say is your favorite of all of those books you've written? I know that's a tough question, but I gotta ask
That's like asking which child is your favorite, right?
Oh, well, we all have a favorite.
Every book has been very, very different. Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad was the first, and it was by far the most successful book, being on the New York Times bestselling list for over 7 years. So obviously that has a near and dear place in my heart. But I think the books that I've done with the Napoleon Hill Foundation have really been very special. And not only 3 Feet from Gold, which was my first book with them, but Outwitting the Devil, having the awesome opportunity to bring Napoleon Hill's work that had been hidden for 73 years out to the public was a huge honor. And then
what did it feel like, though, to have them come to you and say, hey,
Oh.
hey, can you help us? We need your help. What did that feel like?
Well, it was incredible. I've known the foundation folks for a long time, and when they realized that I'd left Rich Dad, they helped. They reached out to me and asked me to help on 3 Feet from Gold, which was a huge honor. But the month we were releasing 3 Feet from Gold, they called me and said, "We have this manuscript, and we know it's special, but we're not quite sure what to do with it. We want your advice." And we're here in San Diego today, so I actually came over here. Ran away from all the distractions and sat down to read the book because it's called Outwitting the Devil, and I thought, oh, I don't know about this.
I don't know about devils.
But I sat down, and in just a few hours I read the original manuscript, which was of course done on a manual typewriter, and it had handwritten notes in it from Napoleon Hill.
Wow.
So it was like, it was incredible to have that experience. So, but in just a few hours, it really helped me transform my life.
Really?
And I thought, this message is so important, it needs to get out there. So it was an incredible honor to do that. And then, of course, my most recent book, which I love, is because it's Think and Grow Rich for Women.
Yes.
So asking me which is my favorite book, it's pretty hard to say. Because in the Rich Dad series, even though Rich Dad Poor Dad was the biggest success we had, the second one, which was Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant, was probably my personal favorite of all 15 books that I wrote for Rich Dad.
Okay.
So,
Now, why is that?
because it was really talking about mindset. And the Cash Flow Quadrant talks about the 4 different ways people make money, and that's as an employee, as a self-employed person, and in both of those categories, you're working for money, right?
Right.
And then the right side of the quadrant is as a business owner or an investor. And school teaches us, most likely, to be an employee or a self-employed person.
Right.
A doctor, lawyer, whatever, you're still on the left side of that quadrant. And when you can kind of see it, and it kind of simplifies the thought process, that if you can convert your mindset to working to build assets through owning businesses, owning real estate, and investing your dollars, that side of the quadrant has the infinite income opportunity. Whereas you only have so many hours in the week, and you're the one working on the left side. And so I just felt that it was such an easy way to explain the thought process of why you need to create assets that generate income.
But I want to go back to, really, because you mentioned 2 of my absolute favorite books. Well, 3 Feet from Gold literally changed my life, because I had grown up in an abusive household. I had married an abusive man, my first husband, and that stuck with me. That groove was so deep that it stuck with me for so long until I was 51 years old, which is when I found that book. And I read 3 Feet from Gold, and literally it opened my eyes to say, there are possibilities out there that I don't even know about. I gotta start exploring. What is my life about? And that book is the one that really put me on that path. So I want to thank you so much for that. And I know I heard about the book, that Greg Reed wrote it, and then you had to rewrite the whole thing. Had to make it make sense, right? And then, the Think and Grow Rich for Women. Now, I read Think and Grow Rich, less than half of it, when I was younger, and I couldn't make it through it. I really tried. I tried hard, because I heard, this is the book you have to read. And I couldn't make it. Some days I couldn't make it through 1 page, because it was very dense for me. But for women, it was so much easier to read.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I was able to read it a couple times. So it's just a
Well,
different
it was fun.
read.
I was able to really highlight over 300 women and talk about, there's nothing wrong with the original Think and Grow Rich book. It's fantastic and it's as valid today as it was when it was released in 1937.
Right.
It's just that back then there were no women in business. And so I had the awesome opportunity to look at those same principles, honor Hill's original work, but then look at those success principles through the eyes of successful women. And it was just so much fun. It was fantastic.
Well, yes, women weren't, in those days, weren't even really working very much. There were, a few here and there, but it's so
Primarily
scattered.
teachers, nurses.
Yeah.
They weren't really in business. They weren't CEOs. And so this gave us an opportunity to say, even though the principle, I believe the steps to success are the same for men and women, we tend to approach those steps differently. And so it's important to give women the opportunity to find role models, to find, when you read the book, you might read one story and say, I don't relate to her at all.
Right.
But then the next one you go, wow, if she can do it, I can do it. And that was the whole purpose, is to provide that mentoring support for a woman seeking the support to reach the success that she deserves.
And it really did with me. I know it has with, probably millions of women around the world. And it really, really hit me hard, which was good. It hit me at the right time, too, which I think is important, right? We were talking earlier about opportunities. Opportunities abound. They are all over the place. But we're not going to see them until we're ready, right? The student will be ready when the teacher will appear when the student is ready. And so I want to talk about financial literacy. Because what do you think about the state of our nation with finances right now?
Well, it's really criminal. As much as I've continued to work, my number one issue is providing the tools for people to become financially stable and then financially free. And the problem that we have is that we're not teaching our children about money in school. And it's a life skill. It's criminal that we're not teaching our kids about money in school. And we teach them about condoms, but we don't teach them about money.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're the janitor, the CEO, or an entrepreneur, we all have to deal with money. And it's really a very simple principle. If you spend less than you earn, you will be better off financially.
Right.
But too many people don't follow that simple rule. They spend more than they earn. And it really comes down to, it's not what you do for your paycheck, it's what you do with your paycheck. And that's the basic difference. And that, when people can start seeing that they are the ones in control. Each of us is where we are today because of the decisions we made before today. And if you want something different out of life, start making different decisions.
So where do you suggest somebody reaches out to, if they're in a position they're saying, you know what, I know I'm spending more than I make, but I can't control myself, which a lot of people feel that way, I think. So what's their first step? I can't control myself. We know that's not true, but what should be their first step?
Well, I tell people if you're deeply in debt, the first thing is to stop digging. And I have a lot of tools that are for free on my website and at SharonLechter.com. There are a lot of tools on the internet to help you get out of debt. And sometimes you just need to have somebody take your hand and help you through it. Just be very careful about finding people who charge you for that kind of support that are not necessarily in it for your best interest. You want to make sure you look at all the debt you have, define what's good debt, what's bad debt, line up all your credit cards. I have a book called Save Wisely, Spend Happily that you have the opportunity to compare your expenses to what the national average is. And by doing that, you can quickly identify areas that maybe you're out of whack and where you need to start making some adjustments. And so it really is about you taking action and making different choices.
Now you mentioned, making sure that you don't find somebody that charges, that they're really looking out for themselves instead of looking out for you. How do you tell who is and who isn't?
Well, there's a lot of debt counseling companies and debt consolidation companies that are nonprofits. I recommend trying to find somebody that is a not-for-profit because they are out there to serve you. A lot of companies are for-profit, and so they are looking at how the spread is that they get paid. And so in the end, you're just moving from one kind of bad debt to another. If it gets you on the right track, maybe it's worth it, but go into it with your eyes open and make the choice that's right for you. Look for somebody that's in the nonprofit arena.
Now that brought a thought to my mind, is I've heard a lot of times, I see a lot of motivational speakers and they talk about how they were down and out, they were down to their last dollar, or they had this many thousands of dollars in credit card debt. I mean, what do you think about that? Because like now they've turned it around.
You want the truth?
Yes, of course, please.
It absolutely is one of the things that drives me nuts, because so many people follow individuals that are on stage saying that. And I'm going, if you make a lot of money, you should be able to figure out how to keep it. And so people that are up there saying they made millions, they lost millions, they've made millions, they've lost millions, I don't think I'd want to listen to them. Maybe for how they made them, but
Right.
They didn't figure out how to keep it. And so my goal is for people to understand how to create long-term wealth, generational wealth. And that's by building and creating assets that will generate revenue to you while you're sleeping and give you revenue and income for not just your lifetime, but for your children and for future generations.
So you have money, you're snoring, money's like coming out of your nose. Oh, I love it. That's awesome. I hadn't even thought about the ups and downs of those, successful, non-successful.
Well, everyone has losses.
Right.
You go, every investment you make, you're taking a certain amount of risk. And certainly I've had investments that went upside down, but I never put my life at risk or my family's livelihood at risk. So it's a matter of making the choices to build wealth and then understand how to keep that wealth.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, what do you say to, I help women break through their fears. So what do you say to people who have money fears? Because I know there's a lot of people who have fear around money. I mean, it's just, I used to have it tremendously. I don't anymore, thank goodness, because I worked myself through it.
Well, almost everyone has a fear of money, because if you think about it, growing up as children, we're not being taught about money in school. And so as children, we're hearing things like, we can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Yes.
We have to pinch our pennies. We need to save for a rainy day. And what do all those statements have in common? They're negative. And so as children, we hear money negative, money negative, money negative. And all of a sudden, we're afraid we're never going to have enough money. And then when we do become successful, we're afraid we're going to lose it. And that all comes from that internal subconscious programming that we've had, that money and emotion, the fear of never having enough. And so once you can really open your mind and think about that, you say, wow, that was how my childhood was.
Yeah.
And you can release it, you can get rid of it like you have.
Yes.
And realize, what are you saying to your own children? Instead of saying we can't afford it, that's a negative statement. It closes your mind. So I challenge you to change your words. Instead of saying we can't afford it, if your child wants something, challenge them and say, so how can you afford it? What can you do to earn it? And by asking it as a question, you trigger that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And the imagination and the creativity gets turned on, instead of that negative statement, which turns a child's mind off into a sadness. So,
And it's prolific, right? It's everywhere. And so how do you recommend, let's say you're in a family, let's say somebody watching has a family who they don't know how to change the family's words. I mean, I know we can't change other people's words, but how can we encourage the others in our family to change their words?
start by changing your own and lead by example. What happens is when someone within the family starts making changes, and let's say they're positive changes, what happens is a fear.
Yeah.
The people around them in their own family are fearful because they see you changing and they're not. And so they tend to try and pull you back
Yes.
by criticizing you, or, and it's not really that they don't want you to succeed, but they're fearful that they're not doing anything. And so they're trying to pull you back. And so once you have some success, they're going to be the first ones to celebrate with you. They may ask you for a loan, but they're the ones that are going to be there to support you. But initially, the initial entry point is going to be tough. You just have to continue surrounding yourself with people who do support you, and making sure you limit the time, even if it's your family, limit the time you're allowing that negativity to enter your brain, and surround yourself with people who want you to win and want to support you to succeed.
Well, let's talk about that, because that leads to mentorship, coaches, how important have coaches or mentors played in your role in your life?
Well, they're everything, and you can find mentors. There's a very big difference between coaches and mentors. Coaches are very important. They help you stay on track on goals that you've set for yourself. And it could be a physical coach, a spiritual coach, a financial coach, a business coach, and they're very important. A mentor, on the other hand, is someone who's been where you want to go. And they have the opportunity to help guide you. They open doors, they can open their Rolodex, they can step into your business and help you identify areas that need to change. So it's very different. So it's important to understand the terminology and the difference. I am not a coach, I am a mentor. And I've always had, and your coaches and your mentors can also be through reading. Mm-hmm. You know, you can read a book that tells you how to do something, and that's your coach, as long as you follow it. You can read a book that tells you how to really open your life to business opportunities, and it can be from somebody who you view as a mentor. Napoleon Hill, mm-hmm. I count him as a mentor. Dale Carnegie as a mentor. But I think it's very important in today's world, because things move so fast, is to arm yourself with both a coach and a mentor. And to identify what you need from each, because and this is something that we have in 3 Feet from Gold. I know it's one of Greg's favorite lines, but it's something that he said, be careful to look for counsel, not opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's very true, and that counsel is from a mentor or a coach who understands what you want to do, versus somebody who's giving you a tip in the elevator, or a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law who's just giving you their opinion. Mm-hmm. So understand the difference.
Yeah, I love that. And you gave me a great tip right before we get started, and it was a mentorship tip. You've been there, you've done that, and you're like, Linda, you gave me this great tip, and now I can carry that with me forever. Nobody had given me that tip before, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But it really is valuable to make sure you follow the person who actually has done it, because we get opinions all the time, right? And we're surrounded by opinions. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And you guys, it's Sharon Lechter. It's just amazing. Just follow her everywhere. Where are you? You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, Instagram. You're everywhere, right? You're YouTube.
SharonLechter.com. I have a new podcast that I'm launching. I have a whole new initiative that's coming out this year. And it's
you want to share about that?
It's called the Play Big Movement, and we'll be talking about that in weeks to come. But there'll be a podcast that I'm launching about, really, if you're going to work, why not work to be the best in your field? And today we talk about legacy. Live your legacy. Don't think about what you're going to leave behind. Create it every day. Live your legacy.
I love that.
And by doing that, you'll create maximum impact. And that's my messaging for my new brands.
Oh, exciting.